It's Friday, April 21st, 2023. Shill segment, patreon.com/Ozone Nightmare. You can go to the show homepage and you will find a link to Lando's Amazon author page. It's the picture of the book with a bookmark and a couple of squares, I guess, down from that is the PayPal symbol. That's where you can subscribe or donate using PayPal subscriptions if you want, or one times. I think it does either one. And as far as I'm aware, the code OZONE, Ozone, will still get you 2 months free of Libsyn, because I have not gotten any notification otherwise. So that's the shill segment up front. Let's go through our March Mammal Madness bracket, because now we're really getting down to it. So in our previous edition where we talked about it, we are in basically the final fours for everything. So for Mighty Stripes, I picked the Okapi, or Okapi, I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce that. And you picked the Kudu, and the winner was the Okapi. So Okapi moves on for that side. So that entire bracket is down to the Okapi, or Okapi. And then we both picked the Hyrax for Itty Bitty Comeback City. The Hyrax did win, so our choice moves ahead there. So then it is on the other side. I had picked the Paleocaster, and you had picked the Eagle. You won with the Eagle. Oh, sorry, I forgot. We went past that. Sorry. So the picks were then between the Eagle and the Homo habilis. You took Homo habilis. I took Eagle, and Eagle won. So Eagle moves ahead on that side.
That is some bullshit right there.
Well, there's upsets. That's like I said, part of the fun is the upsets.
I don't know what numbers they're running, but
it's random number generators, which good or bad. So Eagle won there. Hold on.
That's what seems weird to me, because if it's a random number generator, really you're just like playing like random slots on each one.
Well, because you have to have, there are upsets. If you simply went by common sense winners.
No, I'm not even saying common sense winners. Like, it's the idea of taking trying to break the features of the animals down into computational figures that will not be exact, but will be close, and then entering them into a larger mathematical formula to see who would win. Right? Whereas that would take a lot more time and computation, whereas this is just more random number, slot machine.
Sure.
So I'm just saying, it's bullshit.
Well, not necessarily, though. Maybe the Homo habilis person was in dire straits, and the eagle came down with its talons and ripped its throat out. You don't know what happened.
Yeah, well, I think now we have to play the rationalization game. He was having a bad day. He had a breakup.
He tripped, broke his neck, sad. And as he was gurgling to death, the eagle came down and finished him off.
Half dead. Yeah, okay.
Or he was really depressed, and he put a bunch of honey on his neck.
Go ahead. Next one, we could just rationalize our way through it.
Yeah. Or the eagle tore his asshole out, and he felt that it wasn't worth going on, and threw himself off a cliff.
I wouldn't allow an eagle anywhere near my asshole.
Well,
I'm pretty sure that all our ancestors. I don't know. I don't even know if there's a sexual perversion for having
there's a lot of assumptions to be made. The other day,
Hold
I
on.
was out in the modern day,
Yes.
and I was bending over to pick something up, and I saw a huge shadow of a bird, and for a minute, I had a moment of terror. Because I thought, if that bird swoops, it's going where I don't want it, is all I'm saying, is things can happen. So.
No, I'm just looking it up right now that there is no sexual perversion for eagles.
Oh, well, I mean, there's bestiality. to
No.
cover it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't even think there's a
Oh, you mean from the
bestiality for
bird
eagles.
side?
No, for humans. That there's like humans who want to fuck eagles.
Oh, of course there are. You know there are. You'll never find it because they'll likely never admit to it. There's probably not enough of them to have a community.
You think? So you think it must be somebody who's
Well,
like, eagle.
I know that there are furry outfits for birds. Therefore, if there is a furry outfit for a bird,
Yeah,
see what
but
I'm saying?
it's not really a furry though at that point, is it? It's
Well,
more of
what
a-
I'm saying is it's a way
birdie,
for
you know.
it's a way for someone to get as close as they can to this being acceptable behavior. Is what I'm getting at, you know. So
Okay, so hold on. I have to warn people that I am sick.
Yeah.
Because I can't laugh very well. It actually hurts.
Yeah.
I got a really bad cold. This is me on like the recovery. So I almost so if you hear some weird noises come out of me, it's me trying to laugh but not being able to. Which is honestly the worst possible thing I could do for this podcast because
Yeah, it's okay.
we laugh about everything, but it's going to
We
come
do.
out awful.
especially because I just thought of the title "Furry Hall Pass" because that's what a furry costume does. It gives you a hall pass for anything. Yeah,
Okay.
so-
So we can rationalize our way through this if you would
Right.
like. Go ahead, next one.
Okay. So that was the eagle, and then we both picked the Wolverine with Wolverine versus Penguin, and we were both correct. Which that one.
That would have been a ridiculous upset.
Well, I will say this. I don't
would
know
that be
how.
a Wolverine with COVID who was depressed.
Well, I don't know how. I don't honestly know where on the savagery meter penguins fall. There are animals. I will say this is a general stipulation. Not
compared to Wolverine.
Wait a minute,
Wolverines
wait a
are
minute.
born pissed off.
there are animals that most people assume are very docile and friendly because of their appearance. I have no idea because you have to remember there's one thing.
It's one. If you were talking about like some kind of fuzzy, cute little animal, but like it's not that I don't think penguins can be carnivorous or like are vicious. I'm sure to fish, penguins are the devil. But compared to a wolverine,
Right, but what if the wolverine is in the penguin's habitat? Will the cold affect the wolverine? See what I'm saying is you have to. There are things that are not necessarily that insane.
no, because
to consider.
wolverines exist in the same environment half the time. They're in the Arctic.
I don't know if it's as overly one-sided as we think. Is all I'm going to say. Now the Homo habilis thing, that's a little different. I agree. You're stretching.
No,
But Penguin versus Wolverine, I would bet those cases have happened in nature.
Wolverine, they have documented cases of wolverines fighting off packs of fucking wolves.
Oh, sure, but that's like saying that every human being can fight off a bear. No, it depends on a lot of things. So
No,
a Wolverine,
I think very few humans can fight off a bear. To be honest with you,
well, it depends. If you're properly armed with knowledge and a weapon, maybe you can. A human with an
maybe.
M16 can fight off a bear. So I'm just saying
that's very true.
that
but a human with nothing, with just your t-shirt,
barehanding it.
wood.
Sure, that's yes, that's unlikely.
barehanding
But
it.
I'm sure
Sorry,
someone has.
Barehanding.
Hey, barehanding it. Nope, new show
Hey.
title. Nope, hold on. Barehanding it. Nope, that's
That also sounds almost obscene, but
It does. That's just as good. I'll take barehanding it with the bear spelled as the animal. Okay.
there you go.
All right, so now we're down to basically so it would be on the it would be Okapi versus Hyrax. So what would your pick be for that? Which we have the winners, but I've got them covered up. So I'm going to stick with the Okapi. I kind of like the name.
Versus what?
The Rock Hyrax, which is I believe was your pick from the last one. I think
I'll stick with the Hyrax.
Okay, so
I think it's a cooler name.
All right, so actually I think we both picked Hyrax for that bracket. And then on the other side, it's Wolverine versus Eagle. Ooh. Oh man.
If the Wolverine can catch the eagle, the eagle is fucked. But I don't know if he can catch the eagle. That's actually a tough.
Yeah, that's an interesting because you have flight versus fury.
Yeah, and
furry,
the eagles have fury as well, but
they do. Yeah, and they have good eyesight. I don't know what the Wolverine's eyesight is like.
Man, it all depends on whether the if the Wolverine can get the eagle on the ground, you know what? I'm sure this has happened in nature. Let's find out.
Oh, I'm sure it has. Hey, that's a good point.
Because they tend to...
Wolverine versus eagle. This just
okay, well, this makes no sense.
Oh, here it is.
Course,
wait a minute. What? A bald eagle versus a pack of Wolverines?
Yeah, of course a pack of Wolverines would beat a fucking eagle. I need one-on-one here.
Okay, wait. Here it is. We'll show you precisely what each animal is capable of doing to the other and what would happen if a lone one swooped down on a Wolverine only to realize it wasn't alone. Oh, this is actually a good breakdown, though. This has defenses and offense capabilities. Holy crap, look at this. Bald eagle, defense capabilities. What
site are you on?
A to Z. Here, I'll send you a link to it. This is amazing. This is almost like somebody built a whole... maybe they did.
Oh, A to Z animals. I saw it, yeah.
Yeah, you see it? So defense for eagle. Speed while flying makes it hard to catch, your point. The fact that they can take to the sky protects them from any predators, and predatory senses let eagles detect danger from far away. Wolverines have a thick layer of fur that protects against bites and slashes. Ability to hide in small spaces, which would be an advantage against a bald eagle. Large pack size could frighten... Well, that one
I didn't know that Wolverines had packed.
I didn't either.
If that's true, that's fucking scary. Cause...
It is. Yeah. Bald eagle has a beak up to 3 inches long, 8 talons measuring 2 inches. God, those things are terrifying. Strong grabbing power, but can only carry between 5 and 6 pounds at a time. Wolverine can attack creatures by biting and clawing at vital areas, which I don't know if you're going to be able to figure that out with an eagle the way it's flapping around. That's the other thing, is confusion is an eagle's advantage. Because if it's flapping its wings and screeching, that is not a fun state to be fighting in.
Yeah, but the, what is it, the bite force of the Wolverine
50 and 150 PSI.
And then its teeth. It has 12
specialized
incisors.
Teeth.
Yeah, 12 incisors and 4 long canine teeth.
Interesting. Yeah. It's more even than I would think.
It's very even.
But I think you're right. The key is, do we assume it is able to?
Oh, here we go. But the predatory behavior is the interesting thing. So bald eagles are ambush predators that attack while flying.
Yeah.
They attempt to grab prey with one foot while attacking with the other. That shit's not going to kill a Wolverine.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think it would take an eagle a little while to kill a Wolverine,
or a lucky strike,
or
the throat, or the eyes, or something.
I'm gonna say Wolverine.
Yeah, it's.
But here's the thing. The thing: the Wolverine is more of a scavenger than a hunter.
Right, but it all
you know what?
They're
both ambush hunters.
See, yeah, that's actually a pretty equal fight when you think about it. This is probably the best pairing we've run into.
I'm having a tough. I think it's the Wolverine, and only because if luck isn't a factor, I don't think the eagle would. If the eagle gets knocked down from the sky once or twice, the Wolverine may really fuck it up.
The eagle has to have a fatal strike on the first hit. Has to.
First or second. Or blinded or something.
Well, the thing is, once it misses once, I assume the Wolverine watches it. So that's the problem, is now it's paying attention. If it's but
the difference is the eagle can get altitude, and I don't think the Wolverine's vision is quite that spot on.
Well, the interesting part is, does the Wolverine's first instinct when being attacked to run to cover? Because if it does, the eagle's screwed. Overall, this is a great fight. This is one where the flip of the coin, I would have no problem with it going either way, because this does seem very interesting.
Yeah, okay, hold on, listen. It gets even worse. The bald eagle can dive at a speed of 75 to 100 miles per hour, right? So by the time the Wolverine sees it, the thing's on top of it, right? Whereas the Wolverine can run 30 miles per hour.
This, by the way, is making the X-Men fights between Archangel and Wolverine far better in my mind now.
I still think Wolverine would.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Wolverine too. But like I said, this now actually enhances the comic books for me. So thank you, March Madness.
I mean, Archangel. I think Archangel and Wolverine is a better fight in the comics.
Well, it is. I mean, Yeah. But what I mean is, this makes Archangel even better.
But here's so they can simply fly away from trouble. That's what eagles can do, right?
They can. Yeah.
They're not particularly large or powerful on the ground compared to other animals.
Mm.
So,
meaning if the Wolverine swipes a wing off, that thing is done because it's not going to be able to fight on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so we're gonna. I'll pick Wolverine as well. But this one is probably the
Yeah,
one where if
but
it goes either
apparently-
way, is the most evenly kind of matched in my head.
But apparently, if it's a pack of Wolverines, the Eagle's fucked.
Well, we're not. This is written as
But
singular, therefore
one-on-one,
we're saying one.
Yeah. I don't. It could be a toss up, but I think it's the Wolverine.
What do you pick versus? We already. Okay, so let's see. Okapi versus Hyrax, which was our first pick. Okapi won. Okapi is moving on to the finals, so it's Okapi. And then for Wolverine versus Eagle, we were right. Wolverine won. So now it's just down to 2. Okapi versus Wolverine. Now hold on, I got to look the Okapi up again. Is there a Okapi? Well, let's see. Okapi versus Wolverine. Does anybody?
Oh
does
my
anybody
god,
game this
the
out?
Wolverine would fuck that thing up.
Let's see.
No, because they don't live anywhere near each other.
Yeah.
If you want to take environments if this thing was living in the same environment as a Wolverine, it would freeze to death.
Yeah, I really don't know how, unless it has some kind of savage kick. But I don't.
I mean,
think
it could probably run fast and get away. But again, if it's in the Arctic, I mean, granted, if the Wolverine's in hot temperatures as well, I bet it's probably a little slower.
Here's the other thing: it's a herbivore.
Yeah.
I mean, would it even know how to attack something?
You know what? I'll give you deer. Wolverine can attack and kill deer.
Yeah.
This is a deer.
Yeah, I think Wolverine is
So.
overwhelming. So I think we're both picking that. Well, we'll find out next time because that's the last thing. They haven't done it yet. So.
Oh, they haven't done it yet?
No, that's where it's that. According to their Twitter account,
No, it's
that
gotta
is
be
the
yeah.
latest one.
I don't think. I mean, unless it's like there's some hidden skill that the Okapi has.
And then there is the wild card thing. So I don't know if then they have to face off against the wild card. Or no, that was. No, that was already covered. I think we already covered that. Or no, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, and they're
Wild card one.
solitary. They don't pack. They're herbivores.
Yeah. So let's see. Let me take a look. I'm gonna see if they actually did post the finals because I think. Oh, yeah, they did. I'm sorry. I found it was a different tweet. Wolverine won. That was the
Oh, well,
overall
there you
winner. So this is the final. Yeah, the Wolverine was the overall winner.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah,
Wolverine would
yeah.
fucking destroy an Okapi.
Okay, well there you go.
Well, you know what? Look, we know what we already know. The Wolverine is a scary beast.
Well, you know what? Honestly, this is not me making a joke. I have gotten more education out of this than I expected to. I did not think I would ever on this show be looking up Eagle versus Wolverine fighting.
Or whether people want to have sex with eagles.
That too. So it's point of trying to be educational. Success.
Got it.
So that is the end. Yep, so I can delete that text file now. I've had that bracket in the text file.
I'm glad it was the
month.
Wolverine, because if somehow the Okapi could kill a Wolverine, I'd be very surprised.
You know what? I'm kind of sorry that it didn't end up Eagle versus Wolverine. That's a great final fight.
It was funny, too, is, again, if the Eagle had gone against the Okapi, I think the Eagle could have eventually killed an Okapi as well. Because you know what? I wonder, Eagle versus deer. Let's see.
I agree, because I think the Okapi, that one ending up in a fight with either the Eagle or the Wolverine just seems... That would have to be just a random number generator victory.
A wild golden eagle can take down a deer.
Yeah, I believe that.
So
because if you think about an animal like a deer, the bird could just keep striking at it till it finally just goes down.
Oh man, that's a hell of a picture.
I believe that.
Jesus, there's an image of an eagle attacking a deer, and that deer is fucking fleeing for its life.
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
Not
I don't think anybody wants to see an eagle coming down at them from the sky.
Well,
I mean,
the thing is, with the talons and the speed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's a vicious animal. You know? So.
Yeah. That will fuck your day up. That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. So, Eagle takes it.
That's good.
Let's see. Well,
you had something you wanted to talk
about.
I
do have something, amazingly, yeah. Because I've been sick, I've been watching a lot of TV. Although, you know when you're ill, you end up watching a lot of weird TV.
Last night, before I texted you, I watched the entire web series that David Lynch did called Dumbland.
No, I never heard of that.
It is bizarre. Actually, I watched a lot of his short stuff last night. I probably watched an hour's worth of short film material from David Lynch, which is probably not good for anybody. But my wife would wander in and out of the room and have this look on her face. And she, at one point in the animated one, when one of the people was screaming, she said, "Yeah, I'm kind of afraid of what's going on inside his head." And I'm like, yeah. Because it's a wild animated series, is all I can say.
Oh, it's totally animated.
Yeah, I think he just did it. I remember when he was doing this stuff, when he said he was going to be doing these web shorts. They're really... Imagine, Mike Judge did that King of the Hill series?
Yeah.
Imagine that, but taken very seriously by David Lynch. It's almost like he watched King of the Hill and went, "Oh, this is funny, but what happens if I make it more warped?"
What if it's like Blue Velvet? Is it Blue Velvet?
Kind of, yes. Blue Velvet's Dennis Hopper one, yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's almost like if he made it more like Blue Velvet, where it's like... Because
yes.
Blue Velvet's very sort of all-American, and then it slowly becomes very bizarre and creepy, and
Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to... I would recommend people watch it if they want something weird. But, I mean, one of them was hysterical. I was laughing hysterically at it.
And the thing, to switch from Lynch to Cronenberg, because very often those two occupy a similar space in my mind.
Yeah.
We talked about how Rachel Weisz is doing the what is it called?
The Dead Ringers. Dead Ringers.
I didn't have an interest in it at all, but then I read a big article about her and her involvement in it and her interest. And now I do have an interest in it because
it looks really good.
The way she's come at it, and the I guess she was involved in the writing of it, because when they were writing the scripts, she was kind of in the Zoom roundtable for it.
Yeah, she was involved in it. Yeah, I don't know if she actually wrote any, but she had ideas.
No, but she was ideas. Stuff. Yeah, and then they were talking about how they had all these scientists that were twins come in to talk to them.
Yeah.
And she was talking about how it's not science fiction, it's near fiction, and they had these doctors who were talking about how, like, she was saying that they met these twins, and one of the doctors was like, "Well, I think death is a disease that we will cure one day." And she's like, to that guy, that is not science fiction, that's a reality.
Right.
So, like, after all that, I was like, you know what? Now I'm kind of fascinated and interested in that all of a sudden.
No, the premise of it, which is to have a conception without any, like, just a immaculate birth, I guess, or whatever, immaculate conception. That's no different than people say we will cure cancer in 10 years. Well, it's not science fiction to them, even though it's been said multiple times over decades. So, yes, it's a goal. It's not science fiction. Yeah. But, the trailer's really good, too. If you watch the trailer, it's...
I haven't even seen the trailer. I didn't realize it was out.
Oh, the trailer's been out for a couple of weeks, I think. But it's interesting because it definitely has the echoes of the codependency of the movie.
Yeah.
But that seems to be, and then after that seems to be going its own way, which is kind of the focus on them being female doctors and conception and the thing of...
Yeah, it should, you know what? It should go its own way.
No, I agree. It's like Suspiria. This is like a Suspiria type of remake where they take a core idea and they go a completely different way with it. I think they're taking the codependency and they're making this is my gut feeling. You could tell me when you watch the trailer if you interpret it the same way, is that the one twin wants to achieve this so that the other twin never has to be involved with anybody but her. Because it's clear the one twin wants, I think, to have a family or have a child. And the other one is afraid that means that she'll meet somebody and that person will be a wedge between them. So if she can achieve this immaculate conception, then the other one needs no one but her.
Yeah, Weisz talked about...
fucking warped, but it's a good idea.
Which she talked about in the interview, how she was, it was very much about the codependence and another party basically ripping them apart.
Yes.
So,
and that is the same basic idea of the Jeremy Irons one, but with a different endpoint.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of thought's gone into it, and I like that.
Yes. Like I said, this reminds me of the Suspiria remake, which I thought was probably the best remake I've ever seen.
Although, I'll tell you, on the opposite direction, like I said, when you're sick, you watch weird shit. I watched that movie Violent Night with David Harbour. I had a weird...
how was that?
I had a weird back-to-back David Harbour night. Now, normally, in the evening, I play video games with Joe, but because I'm sick and I pretty much lost my voice for a couple days, I was, it wasn't going to be very fun for Joe to just be sitting there quietly with somebody, So I just kind of watched some movies with my wife and then went to bed early because I felt like shit. But So I watched Violent Night with David Harbour. Now, I really enjoyed that movie. I didn't think I was going to enjoy it quite as much as I did, but man, I really enjoyed that movie because it was like somebody watched John Wick and then watched like Die Hard and was like, you know what? Let's put these together, but let's actually have it be Santa Claus. And like David
Oh, wow.
Harbour,
First review, by the way, the top
Yeah.
quote, better than I expected in the Die Hard field. There you go.
yeah, it was very much so. And then it's like basically you got this Santa Claus who like he doesn't deliver to everybody anymore because not a lot of people believe in him and like feels like capitalism is ruining everything. And he's apparently some kind of old Viking warrior who somehow became, I mean, it's almost implied that he was cursed with this. You know, like, because like they refer, like, there's some implication. At one point, he takes his coat off because he's sewing his wound shut, and he's got all these Celtic tattoos all over his body, and he has a sledgehammer called Brain Smasher, I think is what it was called, or Head Smasher. But I watched the movie, and there was kind of an inconsistency in his abilities, and I was like, interesting. And then later I read that the director said, I wanted his capabilities to be directly linked with the sense of belief in him. So in the beginning of the movie, when he doesn't believe in himself, he's very weak. But as the movie goes on and people start to believe in him more and he starts to believe in himself, he becomes far more powerful. And in the final moments of the movie, he's able to cheat death because he's believed by a large group of people. And I was like, wow, I actually really liked that you thought about that. You know, it wasn't inconsistent. There was actually a theme to it. Otherwise, it is just a silly, fun movie. You know what I mean? Like John Leguizamo as the ridiculous bad guy. You know, and the ways that they kill people. Like, you remember what's the one with Shaun of the Dead? What's his name from Shaun of the Dead?
Which guy?
Who was the lead in Shaun of the Dead?
Nick. No.
Nick Frost is the other guy. No, but the two of them.
Nick Frost
did.
Yeah, what's
they
the
did
other
that.
one's name? Sean? No. Oh, man, how am I
remember.
mixing these
Right.
up? Wait,
They did
no, it's
that
gonna
cop
bug me.
movie.
Yes,
Remember the
Hot
cop
Fuzz.
movie they did? Hot
Yeah,
Fuzz.
my
So we're
wife
in
and I
Hot
watch it all the time. It's such a good movie.
It reminds me of Hot Fuzz because some of the deaths are just so grotesquely over the top.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like he skewers somebody on a giant icicle. He smashes up a whole bunch of SWAT guys with a sledgehammer and a what do you call it? One of those handheld snow plows. Right? And then there's a
Simon Pegg.
Simon Pegg. There it is,
I was
Simon Pegg.
reaching for the Hot Fuzz Blu-ray on my shelf, and that's when it popped into my head. Because I knew there were two letters in one of his name. I'm like, what are the two letters? And I got on.
And then there's a rated R homage to Home Alone in the middle of the movie that actually caused me to outright laugh because it was so kind of like fun and silly at the same time. Like, you know, we always talk about in Home Alone, if somebody had actually done that to somebody, how it would have just torn these people to pieces. Well, this movie was like, you know what? We're going to do that. And they have this sequence in the middle of the movie where these two terrorists are getting to the little girl that they're trying to catch. And she does all this vicious Home Alone shit. And it is fucking vulgar what happens to these people. Where, like, the one guy gets a nail through, like, his chin. I mean, it is such a fun, silly, violent movie. And one of the key things for me, the whole movie is, you know, that classic Santa Claus thing where you hold your nose, he holds his nose and he like magics
Goes up the chimney. Yeah.
So the whole movie, he can't seem to be getting it to work because, you know, he's been drinking and he's, and at the end, John Leguizamo is like about to fucking kill his ass, and there's like this, they're fighting in like the demolished remains of a cabin, and there's a chimney there, and like John Leguizamo is about to kill him, and he does the thing with his nose, and he grabs onto John Leguizamo, and Santa Claus can go up the chimney using magic, but John Leguizamo's body gets torn to pieces.
Oh no!
And Santa Claus
great.
basically shoots out the top in this like giant flume of blood.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's so funny.
That's great.
Like it was at a point where I got to the end of the movie and I read that they were going to do a sequel, and I was like, you know what? Good. I was like, I watched a sequel to this. So yeah, I think you and your wife might enjoy it. Just go in knowing that it's not, this isn't like prime A meat. You know what I mean? Like, it's
okay. That's okay.
It's a silly, violent, But then the joke is the next night I watched Extraction.
Yes, that's quite a difference.
Yeah, so that's the one that the Russo brothers produced, and then
Yeah.
And I think it's directed by one of the guys from John Wick, and it's Chris Hemsworth.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, you couldn't find two movies that are utterly different. But I actually really enjoyed it. It did things that were unexpected to me. From a technical point of view, action-wise, it was fantastic. The way they filmed it, the long shots. I mean, there's so many long shots in that movie. Plus, it's a movie that doesn't take time to over-explain things necessarily. Like, there's a lot they've left out because it just doesn't matter because, like, the movie just kind of goes. But I didn't know that David Harbour was in that either. About halfway through the movie, he shows up. And they probably got him because he wanted somebody who actually looked like he could kick Chris Hemsworth's ass.
Probably.
And as the other thing is that Chris Hemsworth gets his ass kicked a lot. Like, he is like a super murder machine in this movie. But then, it's one of those things that he's got the element of surprise, so that's what makes it. But when he goes up against somebody who's at the same level of him, he does get his ass kicked. I mean, David Harbour nearly fucking destroys him, and it's luck alone that saves Chris Hemsworth. So I actually enjoyed that a lot. Plus, they did this thing I like. In the John Wick movies, you get the sense that John Wick is always the best. Maybe by like a narrow margin, right? But like, he's always the best. In this movie, I got the sense that Chris Hemsworth is lucky. He's very good, but he's lucky. And there's other people that are nearly as good as him, who might be better than him. Because the whole point of the movie is that basically a crime lord's son gets kidnapped by another crime lord. Crime Lord A wants his lieutenant to get Crime Lord A is in prison, so he can't do shit about it. So he tells his lieutenant, get my son back from Crime Lord B. And the lieutenant's like, dude, we don't have the money for this. We don't have the manpower. Like, you're in prison. And Crime Lord A says, get my son back, or I'm going to fucking kill your family. And I can do that from prison. So the lieutenant's like, okay. And he gets a plan. And basically what his plan is to hire an extraction company that he can't afford, pay them the half down that you pay to get them to do the job, right? And then basically, after they get the boy, to fuck them over, kill them, and get the kid. So you don't have to pay them, right? So, good plan. Hemsworth's group comes in. Hemsworth is on the edge, military guy for hire, who lost a kid a couple years ago, lost his wife, at the end of his rope. And he goes in, he picks up the kid, fight sequences galore, very well done, lots of fun to watch. And then when he goes to get the kid to the extraction point, the warlord's lieutenant shows up, fucking kills everybody. Chris Hemsworth barely gets away, and hilarity ensues because Warlord B locks the city down, and now Hemsworth can't get out. And the lieutenant, who is the warlord's lieutenant, who's special forces, he's really good, and he's as good as Hemsworth. Like, there's a couple, you know how sometimes the hero can get hit really hard, but if somebody else gets hit by like that, they're fucking dead.
Right.
Yeah, the warlord's lieutenant gets just as fucked up as Hemsworth and just keeps getting up. It gets to a point in this movie where I was actually kind of rooting for the guy because he took so many hits. And at the end of the day, he says Hemsworth and him team up because he says to the guy, he's like, listen, I didn't want to fuck you over. He's like, but if I didn't get this kid, this guy's going to kill my family.
Right.
And so they kind of team up to get this kid out of the city. And I was rooting for him. He doesn't make it, but I was rooting for him, and he went really far. And it's nice like that, because a lot of times you get these movies like that, they write them this way where it's like the white guy is fucking Captain America and everybody else
Sure.
is beneath him. Whereas in this, like, Jesus Christ, the Indian lieutenant was like incredible. Like, yeah, was it? He hits. Hemsworth hits him with a truck at one point, and the guy gets up. I mean, it's fantastic. So, Extraction is very good. It's more in that John Wick neighborhood, whereas Violent Night is more in that absurdist, Die Hard angle.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a Harbor double feature Night to Night. I just didn't realize he was in it. He gets around, that guy. Like, he's never the lead. Like, I guess he's the lead in Violent Night. I worry that Hellboy, like, really fucked him up, because that was like his big movie thing doing that, and then it didn't go anywhere. Honestly, I liked him as Hellboy. He just needed an entirely different movie.
Well, get ready for whoever's going to play him next, because they're redoing it again. And
they're gonna keep redoing it.
Well, I think Mignola's back involved in this one now or something.
What they need is to get fucking Del Toro back.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. There was something happened between him and Mignola. I don't know what. They basically said the two of them kind of split, and that does that end.
Probably because Mignola was like, "I don't like your version," and Del Toro was like, "Well, I do. Fuck you." I mean, listen, Mignola's version is and Del Toro, they're very different.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. But they're gonna keep making them.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to remember what they said the next one's gonna. I mean, it sounds interesting. Let's see, Hellboy reboot. Yeah,
I like the idea that Harbor was supposed to be a younger Hellboy.
Yeah, Hellboy the Crooked Man. That's what it is. Rebooted with a new movie called Hellboy the Crooked Man. Expand the character. Blah blah blah. The guy who directed Crank is in charge of it, which is interesting. Mike Mignola wrote the script, so this will be the first one where he scripted the movie. It is based on a comic thing. Okay, here it is. Now this is interesting because this is definitely read as a swipe against Del Toro. Quote: "The Crooked Man is a departure from all previous Hellboy films, where Mike Mignola and the creator of the comics, I don't know what that means because he is the creator of the comics, but okay, will finally shepherd an authentic version of his stories and characters in film form." End quote. I'm like, okay, I don't know how else you could read that as he hated Del Toro's version, which is bizarre to me.
I know he didn't like the relationship between Hellboy and the girl.
I get. Well, and maybe that is a Del Toro thing.
Because
he said there has to be a romance.
Because in the comics, Hellboy never had a romantic interest, did he?
I mean, it never happened in the comics.
That's what I mean, yeah.
He's in the comics, Hellboy is very asexual, which is strange.
Yeah, he's a very stoic character in that respect.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily good
Honestly,
or bad.
You know who he had the strongest connection to in the comics, oddly, that I remember?
Abe Sapien.
I was going to say the Homunculus. Because he was close friends with Abe Sapien. But the Homunculus in him, he identified with the Homunculus's problem. And it's
that's
the way,
true. Yeah, I guess
you
could say that. Sure.
Kill the homunculus, or they let the homunculus die because he's got the bomb in him, right?
Yeah, the bomb. Yeah.
That's the thing. That's one of the. I think it's one of the first times that he's like, "Fuck you guys, I'm out of here."
Yeah.
But either way, yeah. So it's yeah, and plus in the comics, oh man, what is her name in the comics? The girl, the pyrokinetic.
I think it's just the same name. I think it's still Liz.
Liz, yeah, Liz he knows her from the time she's a little girl.
Well, yeah, I mean,
so I think that probably bothered Mignola because in the comics it's almost like a daughter relationship.
Well, and that's fine, except that's not what it was in the movie. So
no, not at all.
I mean, whatever. So. Obviously, they did not agree on where to go with the characters, and I'm perfectly fine with the way Hellboy 2 ends. So it's fine.
Comic writers, comic writers are not always good screenplay writers. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah,
but they're gonna keep making them because it's good material. and they've run out of ideas otherwise. So, but the thing I actually really wanted to review that finally came out, and then I got a chance to read, was Daniel Warren Johnson's new book, Do a Powerbomb, came out. Now, this is the guy that did Murder Falcon. Do you remember Murder Falcon?
Yeah, of course. Yep.
Did you read Murder Falcon?
I haven't read it. I haven't read it yet.
All right, so Murder Falcon was his last book, which was probably still one of my favorite graphic novels of all time, right? So when this one came out, I was very interested, but I read that it's very much an homage to like 1980s wrestling, right? Now, I grew up with that wrestling. Like, some of my youngest memories are basically like remembering Hulk Hogan. Remember those big rubber wrestling toys that you could get?
Oh, of course.
Like Andre
yes.
the Giant, you know. Like, I went to one of the WrestleManias when I was a kid because my brother was also really interested. So I guess I'm in the right mindset for this. Like, I don't like later wrestling, but like I like that 80s wrestling. And so this comic is very much an absurdist homage to this. So essentially, the main character is a little girl whose mother is she's called the Steel Rose. She's this incredible Japanese wrestler, and she's defending her belt for like the 10th time against this guy called Cobra's son, who is like this big. He's almost like a luchador type with like the mask, and he's got like this big flowing head of hair. And when they're doing their wrestling match, I think he's supposed to win. I don't even know who's supposed to win. But basically, they're having this wrestling match. Steel Rose's little girl is watching, and the Cobra Sun guy basically like screws up his move and drops her on her neck, right? Which is a real thing that can happen. Is that, you know, these guys are doing these moves and it's very choreographed, and if they fuck it up, people can get really, really hurt. That's one of the things I think people forget about wrestling when they're like, oh, it's all staged. And you're like, it is staged to some degree, but it's also like you're watching stunt guys do stunt shit right before your very eyes. And if they fuck it up, I mean, they can get really hurt. So the wrestler Steel Rose, she gets killed. It's an accident. And this little girl basically watches her mom die. Now, it then cuts forward that she is in her 20s and she is trying to be a wrestler. And her father, who wasn't there the night of the event because he had to work, has kind of forbidden her. He does not want her to pursuing wrestling. And I guess her mom's brother, who's another type of wrestler, his father basically said to him, don't train her, you know. So she's trying, and she's not that great a wrestler, but she can't get anybody to train her because they all know who her mother was. And she is approached by a necromancer from another dimension who basically says, hey, I love wrestling. He's like, and I'd like to invite you to a tournament. And she, of course, is like, what the hell are you talking about? So, of course, he teleports her to his other dimension really quickly and says, hey, he's like, I'm a necromancer from this other world. He goes, I almost conquered this world, and they fought me back, and they exiled me to this island because they couldn't destroy me. He goes, at which point I discovered television from your dimension, and I really love wrestling. And he goes, I want to have a wrestling tournament, and I want you to be part of it because I loved your mother. And she's like, but I'm not a great wrestler. He's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, I want to invite you and great wrestlers from across dimensions. He goes, and whoever wins will get to resurrect one individual. Right? And of course, that's enough to make it work. But it's a tag team event. So the fucking necromancer's like, you better find somebody that will wrestle with you. Who's on board with whatever it is you want. He's like, and you can enter this tournament. He's like, it'll be great. So right then when I was reading this book, I was like, okay, this is not going to be this is going to be the kind of absurdist material that I like. You know what I mean? Like high fantasy, but with like high stakes. And she goes and she finds that guy Cobra Sun, who at this point is doing like, do you remember, who is that wrestler that was really well known for basically putting his body to the limits?
Oh, Mick Foley.
Mick Foley, yeah. He's become a Mick Foley type, and he still
Got
has the luchador mask and everything like that. And she basically comes to him and says, hey, this guy showed up and talked to me and blah, blah, blah. And he says, if I go and to do this fight, it'll bring my mom back. And Cobra Sun says, yeah, he came to me too. And she's like, well, do you want to, if there's any two people who would like to bring my mom back, it would be the two of us. And of course she's angry with him, and he's like, very upset with all of it and has kind of let his life go. But he agrees to help her. And so he says, meet me in this time, and we'll fucking do this weird thing. And when she leaves, you find out that Cobra Sun is her father. The reason he said he wasn't going to be there that night is because they were keeping his identity secret from her, because Cobra Sun is a heel. You know what a heel is in wrestling, right?
The bad guy.
It's
when a guy that's always, most often it's when somebody like The Rock, who was always a good guy.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I think The Rock started off as a bad guy and then turned. Usually it's the other way around. Like Hulk Hogan, who was always, the people's whatever, and then became evil. That's when he turns heel, when he turns into an evil person.
Yeah, so this guy was a heel, and they, because their daughter was young, they were worried she wouldn't understand why her dad and her mom were always fighting on the TV. So he covered his identity so that it wouldn't become a thing. But then when he accidentally killed her mother, they tried desperately not to let her find out. So like I like that the stakes are set up very high, where it's like, she doesn't know who Cobra Sun is. Cobra Sun is her father. They both want to bring back her mother. And then it just turns into this like insane wrestling fighting comic, because they go to this other dimension where they're having this huge event, and all the wrestlers are from other dimensions. And they've all got their own reasons for being in the match, and all their reasons are actually very good. Like, no one's there for bullshit reasons. Like, two of the wrestlers are there who are from that dimension, and they're trying to bring back the greatest wizard of all time so that wizard can destroy the necromancer, right? There's two other fighters there who both their children died in accidents. One was a disease and one was an accident, and they've agreed to basically train together and then what they will, their agreement was, when we get to the end of the match, we'll then figure out which one of us gets the wish. As in, they'll beat the shit out of each other. Everybody has good reasons. There's two sentient orangutans who are trying to bring their sister back to life. So, like, there's nobody that you're rooting against, which is very interesting in a comic like this, because how usually they want to make like a bad guy. Like, I felt bad for everybody. Not everybody. The people who were trying to bring back the good wizard, they were kind of assholes, but even they had good reasons, And the book just kind of goes through that, where Cobra Sun and they're calling her Steel Rose at this point, the Steel Rose daughter, they basically learn to work together to fight all these different bizarre matches. And as these people are fighting each other, it slowly gets whittled down. It is so worth reading. The action is very well done. It's a very fast book to read. If you're like someone like me who grew up with like 80s wrestling, or if you even like wrestling now, you'll enjoy this. The weird twist of it is that, and this is the part that I didn't really expect, was that so they don't win. They get to the end of the match, and it's them versus the two people who are trying to bring their kids back to life, right? And they have this big match, and like it's very brutal, and there's like all sorts of shit going on. And at the penultimate moment, Cobra Sun's mask gets ripped off, and when Steel Rose sees that it's her father, it distracts her for just long enough for them to knock her out and pin her. Which like very nearly kills her. But of course they're in another dimension with a necromancer. They have really great doctors. So they lose. And they get, kind of taken off the field. And when the necromancer goes to basically say, here are your winners, these two people basically say, right, we won. Now we have to figure out which one of us gets to bring our child back. At which point they proceed to start fighting. And the necromancer doesn't know what to do. But granted, he likes all of this for the high drama because he genuinely loves wrestling. So he's excited as hell. So he just steps back and lets them go at it. What do you think that they do? From a story point of view, what do you think happens at that point?
Well, either they kill each other.
They fucking kill each other.
Yeah, that's the only way it could work.
They both will not give up.
Right.
And they beat each other to death. At which point the necromancer grabs Steel Rose and Cobra Sun and says, hey guys,
winners by default.
You're the winners because they're dead. So and I was like, okay. I was like, so are they going to bring the mom back now? I was like, great. They won. So that they get the belts and everything's, and the necromancer brings them over to, they're done with the match. The crowd's gone and he takes them up to his citadel. And he says, listen guys, he's like, I don't know if I have the juice to bring your mom back. At which point Krober's son grabs him and he's like, I'll fuck you up, man. He's like, how could you lie to us? At which point the necromancer puts the fear of fucking God in them because he's like, listen, he's like, I commanded armies. He's like, I could fucking destroy you guys. He's like, I'm being nice here. He goes, I thought I'd have the power. He's like, but I don't right now. He's like, I have the power to wipe you guys off the face of the planet. He's like, bringing me back to life is tough. And of course, at this point, Cobra's son and his daughter have come to terms with each other. And she actually says to him, when I realized it was you, she goes, I was happy about that. Like, because she understands now what happened and it puts things into a different context. And so the father and daughter have reconnected, which is kind of one of the key things of the story. At which point the necromancer says, I have another option for you. He's like, I know somebody who's a really big fan who would like to fight you. And if you were to beat him, you could definitely get your mom back. And they're like, well, who's that? And he's like, God. At which point the book goes completely Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And they go up to the great beyond to fight God, who looks like the bad guy from, what was it? Gladiator. He's like, actually, you remember the bad guy in Gladiator who had the mask, the gold mask at the end?
Yes.
Yeah. He looks like a mixture of the homunculus from Road Warrior.
Yeah.
And the guy from, but it's supposed to be some kind of god in this giant arena. And it just becomes like just so ridiculous and absurd. And they're fighting him in a wrestling ring. Like I'm so happy that books like this exist because they are just so off the wall. Like there's almost like a Monty Python Red Dwarf aspect to all this in its silliness, And of course they don't beat God. But they do make him bleed. And they get to the end, and he's kicked the shit out of them. But he says to them, he's like, you know what, guys? He's like, you guys, I haven't fought anybody that hard in a while. He's like, so I'm going to give you guys these special belts. And the girl's like, fuck your belts. She's like, I came here to bring my mom back. And God's like, well, you didn't win. I'm not doing shit for you. He's like, but you did, put up a really good fight. He's like, so I'm going to give you something. He's like, I'm going to give you access to a memory. And she's like, what? And he touches her head. And she has this memory. And the memory actually harkens back to the beginning of the book where she's a little girl. And her mom says to her this thing about how, what happens when you die? And the mom goes, well, I don't know. She's like, I think you go someplace warm and sunny, like a star far away. She's like, and she says to her, but wherever I go, I'll definitely be watching you. And when the camera angle pans out, you see her mom in the audience because it's the afterlife watching her in the ring. And that's how the book ends, which is beautiful. Did I just lose you?
No, I'm here.
All right. Sorry. My Skype just made a very strange noise at me. Like everything just crapped itself.
Oh.
But
No.
either way, still recording.
Do you still hear me?
I can still hear you.
All
You
right,
still hear me?
good. Then it's not whatever happened last time. That's all that counts. Good, keep
There
going.
you go. Yeah, so it's a really beautiful ending for what is a off the wall, ridiculous book. But if you like wrestling at all, which I grew up with it, and plus in college, like everybody was crazy about fucking The Rock and the
Oh,
wrestling
sure,
game
yeah.
and all that shit. So like for me, like I don't like it now, but I do get a warm fuzzy feeling when I think about classic wrestling.
Yeah.
And this guy Daniel Warren Johnson, I like his he did the Wonder Woman Dead Earth comic.
Mm-hmm.
I like his art style. I mean, it's all him. He does he writes the book and he does all the art for it. So like it's very much his project. And he even I was looking at the cover of the book. Even the way he did the audience, like you can see that he put a lot of attention into. It's not like to do that many different faces and to have them all have like varying reactions. You know what I mean? Like there's just a lot of love and attention that went into every step of the book. So yeah, I like this. I mean, the end gets a bit like almost too absurd, but it's got a big heart and it's done really well. So it's not one of my favorite books of his, but it's still a very fun read. I mean, like Dead Earth, when you get to the end of the Dead Earth book and all the Amazons have become fucking like super monsters. I mean, yeah. He likes to amp it up to that like insane level. But that was a really fun read. So I am still excited to see what he comes out with next.
Well, so far, I mean, we've talked about when somebody does all the stuff themselves. And so far, it sounds like he's at least making entertaining books, even if they're not all necessarily at the same level. So that's good.
Yeah.
Because I like his art style, so I'm happy that he's still making good stuff.
Yeah, and I don't mind if he gets a little bit wacky at the end of it all, because like it's still all just his. I mean, I was just telling my wife about this because we've been watching was it Mandalorian season 3, right?
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, I was like, you can tell that there's a lot of attention on this show from the higher ups. Because like when you watch the first season of The Mandalorian, like it's fun, but the story is small and it kind of wanders around. And you can tell that like no one thought it was gonna be a huge hit. So they were kind of allowed to do what they wanted, right? And then in season 2, you could always you could feel the whole show slowly getting sucked into that like Skywalker vortex, right? And now in season 3, it's like I feel like a lot of the elements that made it really fun for me have been strained out by that Star Wars Disneyfication, where they're like, we need to make this so that we can make a lot of money out of it. And you're like, yeah, but you're turning it into one of your failed projects again. Like it's what made it great was that you kept your corporate fingers out of it a little bit and let it kind of just breathe and be its own thing. But now because people like it more than the fucking movies, you're like, well, Jesus Christ, we need to put everything into it and we need to make sure that we vet it.
Yeah.
We have like test audiences and this and that and the other thing. And it's like, I said to my wife, I was like, I'm enjoying it and they do fun, cool things, but I'm not really having fun anymore with this. And now it's all about bringing Mandalore back and Moff Gideon's back.
It's like we said, was when it was a small thing and they didn't know if it'd be successful, that's when it was fun.
Yeah, and like,
I'm kind of glad I never got that into it, is basically
and
what
my kids still dig it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, in the beginning, it worked on many levels.
It's getting assimilated.
It is, yeah. And that's,
well, of course, we knew that would happen.
That's what I like about this guy, Daniel Warren Johnson, is that even when he did a DC comic, or even when he did a Marvel comic, because he did the Beta Ray Bill book, he maintains his identity and his own kind of flavor for the story and the way of doing things. And I'm like, I like that he has this ability to, I mean, probably to his detriment, because he's probably not going to make a ton of money because they realize that he's always going to do his own shit. But I like that about his books, because like, it's all very him, and he's not letting a publisher or a studio say, hey, we want you to do this instead. Like, it's almost like if you come to me, you know that I'm going to do it my way. And, like, I won't kill your character, but, I'll do it my own way. Like, with the Wonder Woman story, they gave him an Elseworlds, and he did whatever the fuck he pleased. And it was really fun. It was really good. With Beta Ray Bill, I don't know if that Beta Ray Bill book is considered to be part of the central
I don't
universe.
know if it's canon. Yeah, I don't know if it's central or not.
But honestly, it could be, because he didn't do anything
well,
out of the
my
ordinary.
guess would be that they probably gave him the option to either do a completely separate story or told him, okay, here's the boundaries of what Beta Ray Bill's off the beaten path. So
Yeah,
there's more freedom.
get him the sword by the end, and that's all that matters.
All we need to make sure is that these three characters don't show up because they're currently dead.
Yeah.
And that this happens by the end. As long as you do that, anything in between, go cosmic, go crazy, we don't care.
Yeah, exactly. And so I like that, but reading this guy's books, Warren Johnson's, it really makes a stark comparison to other things like this. Like I said, like The Mandalorian, where we talked about the second Skywalker showed up.
I was just thinking, like the minute Luke Skywalker showed up, you knew it was all over with. The freedom had ended.
And that's the thing, is that when the movies didn't work out the way they wanted them to, and they realized that the small thing was, they were like, quick,
they had to run to where they knew the eyeballs were.
Put all the attention there, and it's like, but now this is sucking.
All right.
Because you put all the attention here. I was like, can't you just let it?
Nope. Nope.
Yeah. So, so that's my that's my sort of review.
Well, good.
No, that's it.
If you were done. Oh, that was it. Okay. Well, I have a book review as well. I have a book and movie review.
Oh, did you finish reading?
No, I'm halfway through Frankenstein Unbound, which I'm going to do a very small thing on that. It's very different, but there was a point where they said that Mary Shelley was 19, and I went, oh, good. That means he won't sleep with her. I was wrong. So, and at first I'm like, this is horrifically gross.
Oh, and he's like, and he's older,
well,
isn't he?
Here's the thing, because I went, okay, I literally did this because I had a mental thing where I had to stop and go, is there any way this isn't gross for me? And the only way I could work my brain around it is that the legal age of consent in a lot of the country in the United States is 16. Therefore, a person could have a child at 16. That child could have a child at 16. So he's possibly 32 and she's 19. It's the only math that makes this not completely fucking gross in my head. So I'm running with it.
But I mean, yes, but you don't actually know how old he is, right?
No, you don't know. I mean, the grandchildren are not very old.
Okay, hold on. So hold on, just really quick. It's Frankenstein Unbound. I'm curious now.
Yes. How old he's supposed to be? It's never specified that I saw in the book, and probably for good reason.
Age of protagonist.
Yeah, I don't think there's any specification on it.
Is there a
I mean, the some of the stuff he's doing from a physical standpoint would suggest he's on the younger side. So it's the only way out. Otherwise, the idea of a 60-year-old sleeping with a 19-year-old, which don't get me wrong, it does happen in the United States, especially when large amounts of money are involved in the person who's older. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm saying it ruins the book for me if I can't mentally get myself around it. So,
yeah, I think he's probably a younger grandfather.
That's what we're going with. So
no,
I haven't.
Oh wait,
finished
hold
that.
on.
Yes.
Oh no, never mind. It was no. And yeah,
right.
He's probably. I'll let you keep your logic. Go ahead.
I'm going to keep my logic because otherwise I'm liking the book, but I haven't finished.
Okay.
What I did finish was Legion, which is the book that Exorcist 3 was based off of, which I always read was very different. And I love Exorcist 3. I actually like it far better than the first movie, which I know for some people is, haha, blasphemy. But whatever. I like Exorcist 3 a lot more. Mostly because of Brad Dourif, but also because I just like it better as a movie.
So what is Legion?
Legion is... So originally, they wanted to make a third Exorcist movie. Blatty wrote a screenplay or a script for it. Then they said they weren't going to make it, but he decided to go ahead and make it into a novel. Then they did make the movie, and what they did was it's largely the same. So this is not drastically different until you get to the very end. The ending is different. I think the ending works just as well for the movie as it does for the book. They're different mediums. I think they both work very well. But there's a lot of stuff that was cut out from the book, and the book is a much different feeling story. Exorcist 3 is a horror movie. That's what it is. It's basically about...
But I mean, horror horror movie horror doesn't always translate to books because you can't do a jump scare in
Well,
books.
and the other way around. So that what they excised mostly for the movie was there was a subplot, because essentially Legion is very much a Law and Order book for a long time. At least 50%, nothing is going on with the guy in the cell. There is no Brad. I mean, that character shows up, but not for a very long time. So it's mostly, it really feels a lot like a traditional serial killer film where Kinderman is still the old kind of grizzled cop, although he's way, way weirder in the book than George C. Scott made him in the movie. In the movie, he's very gruff and straightforward. In the book, he is like Columbo, but with dementia. He's constantly just having these little wacky asides that everybody around him just puts up with because he's such a good cop or they like him. But he's such a weird character. I actually love him, but he really comes off as somebody who's almost on coke. He's not. He's just a little bit weird. He's a little bit off. But he's constantly developing this theory over the course of the book on what the nature of evil is. And what his concept of what evil is great, which we'll get to. But he's always having these little things where he's saying little one-offs. And when somebody says, "What'd you say?" He's like, "Never mind. It was nothing." But he's, these little weird side things he's saying or weird kind of inside baseball jokes to himself.
Who do you think he's talking to?
No, he's clearly talking to himself. It's like he's talking into a mirror to somebody who understands what he's saying.
Is he talking to you?
No, he's saying things into the air. He's not talking to the audience.
So you don't think he's talking to the audience at all?
No. I don't. I think this is meant as somebody who just says things.
Unless he's talking to God.
Because he's thinking out loud. Or maybe. Sure, talking to God. Why not?
No, I'm just curious because
he's like a Quentin Tarantino character.
Okay.
Almost, where he's just kind of saying things. I mean, it is for the benefit of the reader, obviously, but it's not intended to be said to a omnipotent fourth person in the room. You know what I mean?
Got it.
So it's definitely to enrich the character for the reader, but he is not speaking to anyone as far as I can tell. Or when he is speaking to people, most people have no idea what the hell he's talking about, which is because he's going by this internal logic that he's never really laying out until the very end of the book. So the murders are largely the same as they are in the movie, where there's this young child is killed and crucified, and there's these mutilations, and they start to realize that they bear the same marks as the Gemini killer, who had stopped killing because they said he died back in like the 70s. But there are things happening that were never released to the general public so that they wouldn't know to do, like mutilations to the body. So they get to a certain point and they realize that either there was a second killer who worked with the Gemini, or somebody has figured out how to copy his crimes. That's the gist of most of the book. And in fact, like I said, there's no supernatural, no nothing for a very long time. And then what they do in the book that is not done, the character is completely missing from the movie, is they start to track some of these people back to a psychiatric hospital. And this is where it starts to get where the movie is, which was also with a patient, an unnamed patient who was found rambling one day that's in a cell and nobody knows who he is. That part's the same. But one of the doctors, Kinderman becomes convinced is actually the killer, because the doctor, unbeknownst to everybody for most of the book, is secretly doing, I don't know what they call it, where you record the dead air with a microphone. There's a name for it. And then you hear voices on it. His wife had died, and he couldn't get over it. So
there's
spirit recordings or something. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
There's a name for it. Whatever those are, he's doing that because he's convinced he's hearing his wife's voice. And what he is actually hearing voices because, of course, there is demons and an afterlife and everything else, because that was established in The Exorcist, that there are demons and there is a supernatural element to life. And so Kinderman is sure it's him, until the point where they realize that he's killed himself like 4 days before some of these murders were happening, because a double of himself appeared and spoke to him, and it was actually the same demon that is inside the patient in the psychiatric hospital. And so it is not the demon from The Exorcist. It is the demon from The Exorcist is helping a different demon, is helping, I'm trying to remember how this exactly lays out. The demon from The Exorcist, who's never named in these books, but in that what he does is that demon was pissed off that Karis from the first movie managed to get him out of the little girl, right? So this demon is helping the Gemini killer possess old people in the mental hospital because they have the freedom to go out and kill people. So the reason they can't figure out who's killing everybody is because he's possessing multiple bodies. And what you find out, and I don't think any of this was in the movie. I don't remember any of the backstory of the Gemini, but in the book, they get into why the Gemini was killing people. And the reason was that he and his brother were very close, and his father was a religious nut who basically beat them and abused them. And I think his brother killed himself. And so the Gemini was a very nice, kind person until his brother died, and that snapped him because then he blamed his father, and his father was a priest, so he's killing people in a religious manner to shame his father. He basically wants to shame his father to literally to death. And so the book, because there's a point where Kinderman goes in and sees Father Karras, and then they dig up Karras' body, and it's not there, and a different person is in the coffin, so they realize it is Karras in the cell, but it also isn't Karras in the cell, but he's also not the one killing people, so it is similar in where they're shifting around bodies. And what happens is the demon is interesting because he's not a classical demon. He kind of doesn't necessarily even, not the exorcist demon, the current demon or whatever, what's in the body, whatever they call it. He's kind of just doing it because he knows he has to. He's like, well, I'm a demon. This is what's expected of me. And the Gemini is a convenient kind of method of doing things. But he almost doesn't seem interested in being evil. It's a weird demon.
He isn't like, rah, 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 I'm so evil.
No. In fact, his biggest thing is he's really hung up on impersonating animal calls. Like, he keeps doing animal calls. He's like, I've almost got it. And Kinnaman's like, what the fuck? And he's like, yeah, that's kind of like a deer, but I don't quite have it right. And it's almost the boredom of a creature of immense power who doesn't really want to engage with lower forms type of thing. It's interesting. I really don't know what to make of it. A lot of this book is kind of a little off because you don't really know what the tone is necessarily. So I know a lot of people don't like the book. I fucking loved it. I thought it was great. I actually think you would like it too.
I'm far more interested in the book than I am in the...
I think you would like this book. It's a quick read too. It's not a particularly long book. I mean, not if you read long books.
You said that, was it the director who came up with the story?
No, the author, the original author of The Exorcist.
The original
Yes.
author. Okay, so it isn't like someone who usually writes screenplays doing a book.
No. This is. I mean, people have said The Exorcist, the original book, also isn't particularly well written compared to how good the movie is for them. Okay. So, and a lot of people prefer the movie to this. They're separate entities. They really are. I mean, they are the same story, but there's so much more weird shit in this that it becomes. I love the movie. I think the movie's great. The movie, though, is very much a sequel to The Exorcist. This feels like it's sort of a sequel, but doesn't necessarily function as a direct... I mean, it is the same demon that killed Karras, so there's a reason why he's appearing as Karras, and that's to fuck with Kinderman, because Kinderman was friends with him and the priest from the first movie, who's in a couple of scenes, and in the book, I think, was a bigger character. So there is a direct connection, but it doesn't necessarily... If you had never read The Exorcist book, which I did not, but know what the movie is, which I've seen the movie, you're fine in here. You don't need all the details. Like, all the stuff is basically, at one point, they talk about the fact that there was an exorcist, and when Kinderman's talking to the priest, he's like, well, do you believe it happened? And the priest is like, well, all I know is that Karras cleared that kid of whatever it was and killed himself, so I'm going to go with it must have been real. But even they don't seem to really necessarily think what happened or know for sure. But anyway, this is where the biggest split happens. In the movie, when it gets to the end, Karras takes over control and has Kinderman kill him. And in the movie, it's far more that the demon is doing this to fuck with Karras for driving him out. There's more of the direct exorcist thing going on in the movie version. In this one, the Gemini is in there, and he's in there with Kinderman, and then there's a point where he stops, and he just, he just voids out. And the Gemini says, that's it, it's over with, and just leaves Karras' body, and then Karras' body dies. And what you find out is his father had a stroke and died right then, and because his father was dead, the Gemini's mission was over, therefore he just stops. And then they bury Karras' body, they leave his death as the date that it was when he got out of when he killed himself, and they just kind of, that's where the book ends. Oh, and then there's, and that's where the story ends. And then the very end of it is the Kinderman and his lieutenant are sitting in a, like some diner or whatever, having a burger. And Atkins like, okay. Kinderman's like, yeah, this really has convinced me of what the nature of good and evil is. And Atkins is like, cause that's the lieutenant. He says, well, what is it? Cause he's been muttering about this the whole goddamn book. And he says, essentially, that the Big Bang was Lucifer's fall from heaven. And everything that's happened after that, including evolution, is Lucifer's attempt to make himself back into an angel. And that's why there's such a schism and there's good and evil and everything. It's because this is all of creation is Lucifer's fall from heaven, shattering into the universe. And basically that's where the book ends. It's interesting.
I'd love to know where the theory comes from.
Well, it's all this little stuff. I mean, I would spend 4 hours talking about the book because this is all these little asides. Some of them are related to this and some of them aren't.
No, I'd love to know what sources he used for the mythology.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything about, as far as where that came from, I don't know. That's beyond me. So I really don't know. I've never read anything, but now I'm interested. Now I'm like you. I'm interested in where did this come from? Because I just assumed that this was, because none of that shit is in the movie. The movie has none of this. It doesn't get into, there's not the doctor who hears the voices, because then you realize that one of the voices is the demon that was inhabiting Reagan and all this stuff. All that's missing from the movie. And it's much more of just the demon is fucking with Karras and through Karras into Kinderman because he's pissed off that he got beaten. That's really what Exorcist 3 is. That's all it is. Which I say that like it's bad. It's not. It makes the movie nice and simple and streamlined. This is way more philosophical, way more into
and that's why it doesn't work as a movie.
There's no way they could have incorporated this. And George C. Scott would have been the worst possible person. Literally, Peter Falk would have played this character. This is Columbo with a weird philosophical hang-up. That's what it is. He feels completely alien to what the movie version is.
Who's the guy who played Walter White?
Oh, Bryan Cranston. Cranston?
I'm getting a strong Cranston vibe.
Yes, he could have played it too. That's what I'm saying. I only say that
because I was trying to figure out movies to show my kids the other night, and I showed them the trailer for Godzilla, and all of that is like Cranston doing the narration.
Right.
So like that kind of like moody nuts, you can totally see that.
Yeah. So.
Good.
I really liked it. Like I said, it's very different. It is definitely
it's nice when it works out,
Yeah, and I think the reason it works so well is because some of the central philosophical stuff is so different. Otherwise, it would just come off as this is the movie. But there's far more going on in it, and that's what I like about it. So I would tell people it's, some people, I will admit, will probably be put off by the Kinderman character because his rambling it's almost comical. And at times it seems like it's from a different type of story, but it still manages to work. So I'm not going to say it's the most well-written book I've ever read, and some of the tone is a little all over the place, but I think there's still enough interesting about it. And the fact that it does not come off as a horror book, it comes off more as like a police procedural that then has this twist of, but it's Father Karras from the first book, is this guy in the cell. And then it's the misdirect of the other doctor who you're very sure is the killer. And they really make it out like he is. And then you realize, no, it's just the tragedy of his life just happens to come off like it's a reason to do this stuff. There's lots of neat stuff to it. But like I said, I don't want to come off like it's the best written thing I've ever read, but it certainly exists as a good counterpart to the movie. So I liked it. I'm glad I read it. I actually there's an illustrated version of it that went out of print with these really horrific illustrations. I bought that immediately after finishing.
Horrific illustrations. Yeah, that's like right up your alley.
Yeah. I mean, but it went out of print and now they've brought it back with those. I mean, they're really, really good. They're like Francis Bacon type illustrations inside. So I'm like, I want that because this is one of the cases where I want the physical version because it has that going for it. Plus I just like the book. So worth reading. It's all over the place. You can get it on, Kindle or whatever. So you don't have to buy the physical version. I did, but I think it's a interesting book, especially because it doesn't just feel like the starting point for the movie. And I don't think the characters, this is another case where the characters, especially Kinderman, because he is the central one, I did not map George C. Scott onto this guy at all. But he's very different. So even though the story is largely the same in terms of the overall plot points, it exists as its own thing. And I think that's great, even though it was intended as what the movie was going to be. They did adapt a lot of it. But man, in a different director's hands, I'd be fascinated what this movie would have looked like. But regardless, it's a good book. So there's that.
It definitely smells more like Fincher.
Or something else. Yeah, Fincher probably would have been a good pick for it. Yeah, something like that. Like it reminds me of Fallen a lot. You know,
yes, I was thinking that. Yeah, with Denzel Washington. Yeah.
Yeah, except that it keeps that supernatural shit in the back pocket for a while, to the point where I would never have released this story. I would not have called it Exorcist 3. I would have called it Legion to misdirect people as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because this would be a great surprise. I mean, not that can happen anymore, not in the modern world, but back before the internet and all the spoiler stuff, this would have been a huge Shyamalan type of twist when people realized it was actually a Exorcist sequel in many ways. Would have been a great setup, but whatever. That's just the way the world works. Still a good book. Then, and I finished the book a while ago, so I should make it like I did one to the other. I was looking for a movie to watch out of Criterion's Afrofuturism collection, which I've already reviewed one, which was the Sun Ra movie, Space is the Place, which is a great movie that people should watch. But there was another one that I don't think was in there at first. I don't remember seeing the title in there. I think they recently added it. And it's a movie from 2021 called Neptune Frost. And I'd heard that this was an interesting and good film. And it's I don't actually know what country it's from. Hold on a minute, because I don't think it's an American movie. I doubt it. Let's see. Not with some of the shit that's going on, and I cannot imagine this was an American production. Where was this movie actually made? It is, okay, countries. Rwanda, France, Canada. Okay, well, that's countries of origin, but I think most of it was filmed in Rwanda. That makes more sense. And it was described as, here we go, a Afrofuturist science fiction romance punk musical. And the one word in that entire chain that tripped me up, I'm sure you can guess, was...
Musical.
Because I fucking don't like musicals. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to go in with it. I'll try it. And if the musical numbers are Sound of Music bullshit, I'll just jump out. But luckily, it's not like that. It is far more like a Rocky Horror type where the musical numbers are... And it's not even that structured for most of it. So it feels like more of... almost the whole thing where, because in the very beginning, the characters are working in a mine and they're singing songs to deal with the fact that they're doing horrible labor. You know what I mean? That kind of labor music type of thing. Almost all the musical numbers are like that, where they are singing to distract themselves from the misery that they're in. That's fine, because it's not everybody stopping and dancing in like some stupid show number and, Mary Poppins animated penguin bullshit. It's not that. I can't stand any of that. And this is not that. So if your concern would be that, don't worry about it. That doesn't happen. But essentially, the story is that the main character, whose name is, I think it's, I have to remember, because is it Maltus? I can't remember the guy's name. But anyway, he and his brother, his mother dies, and he and his brother are working in, they never say the country, but it's got to be some type of African nation of some kind, where, they're mining the stuff that goes into computers, cell phones, technology, that type of thing, under terrible conditions, with like men with machine guns. And his brother, I don't know if the brothers whose name was Techno. He's having this thing where either he goes into some kind of hallucination or something, where he's holding up one of the rocks and he's singing about it, and one of the guards hits him in the head with a gun and kills him. And then his brother leaves the camp and goes on the run. He's out in the countryside somewhere. He goes to sleep under a tree, at which point he has this vision thing happen, vision premonition, reality warping, because there's different dimensions and shit that come up. So it's never really clear, but in the vision, it's him and this woman and a guy who's called the Wheelman, who is essentially like a like a prophet type of person who appears and is talking about how, connection is the key to humanity. And there's a lot of philosophical stuff going on. There's also this is a political film. If you are a racist, don't watch this. If you have a problem with the realities of inequality when it comes to the first and the third world, don't watch this, because they do not cherry coat shit. So you will not have a good time. Just don't bother. And so then the story shifts to this woman whose name is Neptune, and she's wandering around, and there's a lot of vagary, I'll admit, that intentionally, where you don't really know what's going on, but where she is, there's some kind of riot happening at the university, and it relates to the first world and the fact that people benefit from technology without acknowledging the human cost, that these people get paid nothing to mine these toxic materials that then end up in a nice fancy iPhone that some white privileged person gets to use on Fifth Avenue, and that they're very happy to ignore the human cost of these gadgets they have. This is what I mean about it's not a subtle film. They say this shit blatantly because it is the truth, and they say it. So then she meets this guy, and the guy is like, you got to be careful because there's soldiers all over, and they're trying to wipe people out. And he kind of brings her back to his place, and they're starting to fool around, at which point he puts his hand under her skirt, and it's never explicitly said, but you assume that he must have found something other than what he thought he was going to find. So there is a trans rights element to this movie as well. So you can see where a lot of people are not going to have fun with this film because of their hangups.
The description is that she is intersexed.
Yes, they never ever really specify it, but he immediately is repulsed and pulls away from her, so she runs out on him, and then eventually makes her way into this hacker collective that is somewhere in the country. And it's all these people who have left either the mines or this oppressive government, and they're gathering together, and their proximity to each other is now generating some kind of, I don't know if you'd call it a self-contained internet or something, or they're a YouTube presence. Again, they never really put a nail onto what it is, but now they start making videos, and they're basically saying, people are happy to be ignorant of the fact that people are dying for them to have their fancy little doodads. And, and then there's a thing where the guy who was trying to have sex with Neptune shows up at the camp dressed as a soldier, and so everybody wants to kill him, but he's the brother of one of the people that lives at the camp, and they're talking to each other, and she says, why did you run out on Neptune? And he kind of says, I didn't know, but he never says what he didn't know, but of course it would be that she was not actually I guess what you would call 100% female or whatever. And she's like, oh, so basically you had a problem because it didn't conform to what you think it should be. And he's like, yes. And she's like, get the fuck out of here, and throws him out. And then, somebody comes in and says, what was going on with that? And she says, because they say, why was he dressed as a soldier? Or why'd you let the soldier go? And she said, no, it's not. And this I didn't get at first, but then when I thought about it, I understood what the messaging was. She says, he's not a soldier. He's just dressed as one as a disguise. And they're like, why? And she says, because he was raised as a boy, and he's doing what a boy is meant to do. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he's mimicking the violent tendencies that manhood is meant to represent in different parts of the world. I get it. Because at first I was like, well, okay, what does she mean by it? Because the movie throws a lot of shit at you. And I'll be the first one to tell you that half of this movie probably I couldn't even get, because I'm not black. I'm not an oppressed class.
Well, you're not African. I mean,
I'm not African. I'm not transsexual. There's a bunch of stuff in here that other people will get more out of. But even I was like, okay, I got it. I know what it is. I understand the messaging of the movie, but I know there's stuff that went right over my head because it's not my life experience. Nonetheless, I thought it was great, but it is a confrontational movie. There's no other way to say it. This movie will actively piss off people who think a certain way. So if any of the stuff I talked about is stuff you don't want to see, don't watch it, because it is not going to treat you very kindly as a viewer.
Maybe you should watch it.
No.
That people have different points of view.
Anybody who has no open-mindedness whatsoever is going to immediately think that this is a propaganda film by the woke mob or SJW bros, or I guess not bros, or whatever the term would be. Whatever people have to throw up as a defense mechanism against the fact that they can't handle people that are different than them. that shielding will be fucking pounded into dust. So, don't bother. Why? Why make yourself angry? You're angry enough about dumb shit as it is. Why watch a movie to just make yourself even angrier? Because people like that, they tend to decide to go be violent about it. So just skip it. I doubt you're even listening to this show anyway. At this point, you would have given up on us. So I doubt you're here anyway. But if you are by accident, go away. Just leave.
Are you presuming that we're part of the woke mob?
I guess I'm sure the fact that we don't want to kill people for being different would make us part of it. So yes. Oh. That's just the reality in the modern day is if you think anybody that doesn't think and look like you should have rights, then you're part of it. You're part of the problem. So I'm part of the problem. I don't know about you. I'm part of the problem. So whatever. The fact that I like this movie for some people would be enough to fucking string me up by my neck and then burn my body. So whatever.
You know, there is an interesting sort of area of cyberpunk that is like the cyberpunk that is not American, not white, not European. Like yes. There was a small there's a minority of writing that came out that was basically like Afro cyberpunk, which is this vision of what would Africa look like in this cyberpunk future. And we didn't get enough of it, but it was interesting. I mean, there's a lot of it that was very sort of northern African, like Egyptian. I mean, When Gravity Fails is in that group where that's Egyptian cyberpunk, and then but there's like a small group of writers that had these kind of interesting visions of this like, you know, Africa as being very advanced in this future.
Well, this, I'll be honest with you, feels like what Black Panther, the movie, would have been without Disney's control or resources.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. This felt a lot like what a really uninhibited version of Black Panther would have been. Which, again, would have made it intolerable to a mainstream audience. Because Black Panther, for all of its political messaging, is very tame in comparison to something like this. Something like this that actually has the letters ACAB in a song. That right there would spike it with any American distributor. Dead. There's no way you're putting ACAB into something American and not having it be, you know, the domain of a couple of theaters in San Francisco and New York City, and that's it. So as soon as I saw that, I went, oh yeah, there's no way this movie could ever have played in any way other than what it is, which is a non-American version. So,
yeah, it sounds interesting. I mean,
I liked it a lot. It is confrontational.
I saw the trailer really quickly where you were talking, and I see what you mean about the music and the way it's used and the visuals. It's very interesting.
It was something different. The visuals are gorgeous. It is beautifully shot. There's no question about that. It's really nice use of color. The songs are actually pretty good, and I'm normally, again, not a musical person, but I liked almost all the songs. And again, it has a very strong artistic voice to it, and it feels like a very honest movie in a way that most movies, or at least most American movies, I shouldn't say most movies, but a lot of them, the American stuff, isn't. There's always a restraint with a lot of stuff that comes out. This doesn't seem to have any restraint whatsoever. And it's also, like I said, a beautiful film to look at. And I liked it a lot. But it will definitely, I mean, there's no way this is a general release. No way. So it's on Criterion, but it is actually in other spots. I think Amazon might have it too. I'm pretty sure it's on a couple of different services. So,
did you look up the directors? Because they've got some other stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna look into some
Dream
of the other
States.
Yeah, that one looks interesting.
It's totally shot on an iPhone.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if this one was. I don't think so, but maybe it was. It doesn't look it. It's a great looking movie. It's $4 on Amazon. I would have paid $4. I would have been very happy with a $4 rental. I just happened to get it because it was on Criterion. So if you have that, it's already in there. But Kino Lorber, yeah, that should tell you that's not a standard release either because they put out weird and offbeat stuff. So
interesting. Yeah, yeah. That
Experimental,
cool.
Yes, that's also somebody. this DIY Afrofuturist utopian musical is an experiment we don't see happen except for every now and then. Yes,
No,
I would agree.
And that's kind of the difference between art and commercial art. You know, I think commercial art has become so widespread that we kind of accept it as the norm. But there was a point where people created art that was challenging and not pretty. It kind of spat in your face with a statement, and it didn't necessarily sell well.
No.
You know, it's funny because I feel like Banksy is always trying to get to that point.
Yes, I agree.
Where he is not a commercial artist, he's a go fuck yourself artist. And
right.
But the problem is that the commercialism keeps swallowing him back up. So that whole thing where he tried to shred his own painting,
isn't that great? I was going to bring that example up. That feels like the ultimate version of that.
Right, but then it got stuck halfway through.
Right.
And now it's worth and now it's worth 3 times as much.
Yeah. I know.
Right? So it's so funny how that works, and how so many of the paintings that today we look at and we're like, oh, this is worth billions and it's amazing. These were paintings, these were like, you know, the kind of rebellious statements of their age. You know? So I feel bad that we don't have more experimental art.
By the way,
more people making stuff just to make it, to say something.
Interestingly, there are only 8 reviews of it on IMDb, but not a one of them is a bad one, which is, I can't believe that somebody has come in and bombed it. But there's one in here that is probably the most perfect paragraph and a half summation that there could possibly be. Quote, the headline is Unambiguous Gold Mine, which is a reference to the movie itself. So you would get that if you watched the movie. Quote, take Sun Ra's Space is the Place. Updated to modern day Africa. It runs like, I'm not going to pronounce this right, Pawakatsi, if that movie had an actual plot. Combined liberally with costumes and makeup reminiscent of Liquid Sky. Also a great movie if you want some real art house shit. Add in a teaspoon of 2001. A dash of Viridiana. Fold in liberal amounts of Marxist poetry. Beware, it's a musical. Probably the only sci-fi-ish musical ever attempted. The musical parts often drag on, especially the anti-imperialism poetry jams. However, it's well worth the watch for all the color. Contains enough gender bending to qualify as a product of the 21st century. What the fuck did I just watch? Will be a reaction upon the conclusion. Tunes reminiscent of Aphex Twin, Deep Forest, and the Red Army Choir. Destined to become a cult favorite in 20 years or so. And it's funny they mentioned Aphex Twin because the first song, I definitely heard stuff that I went, that sounds like Aphex Twin samples. So I agree, that is in there.
You know what? Aphex Twin, though, it's a great example of an artist who had some commercial success, but otherwise it's like, you know what? I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I please.
I read something where they said he would never make it today, that when he came out was the perfect time for him to come out, because now he would be seen as an imitator.
Well, yeah, but I mean, at the time he was creating, you know, this incredible techno, and he went into this weird direction where it was like, you had to be able to find the rhythm in his music. You know, there's a lot of music of his I still listen to where people are like, this is just noise. And I'm like, no, you got to find it. It's in there. It's like this. It's so funny. It's like a path through the chaos. It's one of the things I love most about Aphex Twin. You know, there's like Window Licker. A lot of that stuff is more accessible. But especially when he got into like some of his like really weird combinations of rhythm and whatnot, and the songs that all have numerical names, you listen to those and it just feels like this chaos, and yet if you listen you can find the beat and the rhythm, and it kind of guides you through, and it's like it's an amazing sort of, I don't know if it was his intent but for me it very much feels a statement of like everyday life. It's like finding your path through that chaos.
Sure.
But he is a great example, like I said, of an artist who just kind of said, fuck you, I'm making what I'm making.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, the non-commercial art. It's hard to be a non-commercial artist in this day and age because you have to support it. You have to support your habit somehow. You know?
It is not easy, I agree.
But yeah, it is a beautiful looking movie.
I liked it a lot. I thought it actually worked far better than I expected it to.
I'm trying to see if I could hold on. if there is a good example of the Afro cyberpunk. Oh my god, the imagery looks fantastic though. But yeah, I know there's some really good books.
I mean, Black Panther is probably the most mainstream one, and it's
really,
not.
You can see it?
Well, look, I'm not saying I think it's necessarily the best example, but it does have a Afrofuturist and cyberpunk in terms of the technology and the application of it against classism and racism. So technically, does it feel like one? Not really, but it does touch on at least some of the elements that some cyberpunk gets into.
I think it's this one. Is this the guy who did the Slow Mongoose? Hold on one second. This might be it.
What's it called?
No, it's not. I thought it was, but Slow Mongoose.
Yeah. I'm not saying Black Panther is a great example of it, but
no,
it
I'm just trying to remember some of the stuff I've read, because like I said, a lot of the stuff I've read kind of leans toward like Northern African.
Yeah.
But I know I've read some other stuff.
Snow Crash kind of, because Hero is half black, half Japanese.
I was honestly thinking of Snow Crash, but I was trying to find material that there is a wealth of material that is written by African writers about that vision of the future.
Oh, I'm sure there
is. Which is a different kind of vision of the future. I mean, there was a woman who was in the writing program, was named Nalo Hopkinson. She wasn't a cyberpunk writer, but like I remember her saying that when you have you can't necessarily have unlike movies or other things, like you can't have a white writer necessarily do an African story and have it be 100% dead on, because there is there's an emotional depth that's missing there, because that writer didn't grow up in that situation. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's why I very specifically pointed out that this movie will clearly hit different people differently than me.
So like Snow Crash, not a thing against it, but Snow Crash, Neil Stephenson is a very white dude.
Yes, he is.
So his main character, hero protagonist, who is half black, half Japanese, he is that in the book, but there is going to be an element of his DNA that is very white guy.
Well, I was going to say the story really doesn't delve into that much.
Exactly.
It doesn't really get into his backstory outside of the swords, and that's about it.
And that's one of the things. Like, I always try to put a string of Hispanic DNA in my characters, because at the end of the day, I grew up Hispanic, so that's my base. You know, and I feel bad because my wife was like, there's so many. There's so few female protagonists, but I think what it is to some extent, there's a lot of sci-fi writers are men, and they tend to write male characters because that's what we know. So it's good to have this material like Neptune Frost being made by people, because I know that the director is from Rwanda. You know what I mean? It's like telling stories from their specific cultural point of view. It's important.
And that's why Dead Ringer seems interesting, because it's not just a white guy writing it.
No,
it's a female-driven thing.
It's completely female-driven from the looks of it.
Yeah, or like God's War and that type of stuff, where was it God's War?
Yeah, God's War. Yeah, God's War could not have been written by a man.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So a lot of that stuff, like what your wife said, it's true because it always has been true, but I think it's changing.
It is changing.
It's going to be slow, just like everything else. Nothing changes quick because a lot of people aren't comfortable with it. And unfortunately, that's what I mean about Black Panther, which was a largely black production, almost entirely as far as I know. But still, what was over the top of it? Disney. It was never going to be able to say certain things. I don't care how free the creators were told they were. We
were just talking about this with Mandalorian.
Right. So that's what I mean about...
And Mandalorian is on like a very minor scale, but like I said, the second the mouse was like, that's going to make money, we better get our paws into that.
And that's like with Black Panther. People were immediately offended by it because it had a black point of view. And that's nothing compared to this movie. So, yeah, this is the inherent problem.
I don't find anything... let me rephrase. I'm not personally offended by anything in Black Panther. I think Black Panther is a great movie that went as far as it was allowed to go.
Of course. Yeah. That's what I'm getting at, is if you thought that Black Panther felt restrained, which it was. Watch this. That's what I mean about this. There is a comparison between these movies. Not in terms of the superhero. There's no superhero outfit, and yet Neptune is essentially a superhero. This is almost an anti-Matrix, I think is what I said in my 5 about it, where it feels like it is both informed by the Matrix and a response against it, because it is from a very different viewpoint, and it is saying, yes, but where does this technology come from? In the modern day, whereas the Matrix was a futurist, in the future type of thing, where it was us against robots. Well, this is not quite that type of thing. But Neptune does seem to have some kind of abilities technologically, and so she feels like a Neo type, but in a much different film. So, like I said, I think there are people who will enjoy it quite a bit, but it is a very political film. So it may come off as something else, but that is what is at the heart of it. It is not beating around the bush in some of the stuff that it is talking about. So, but like I said, I liked it, and I don't usually like musicals. So just that alone, yeah, I think it's worth seeing. $4 on Amazon, I think, is dirt cheap. And if you have Criterion, it's already there. So, and that's it. That's all I have to review, because between Legion and that, I had a lot to say. So honestly, I think we recommended everything. Everything that we've talked about would be a recommendation. Yeah? Yeah.
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 So, and that's it. That's our show. So thanks for stopping by, and go watch something. We've given you a wide range of media and themes. So go pick something. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you again next week. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.